Welcome to rSlash Prorevenge, where OP destroys a man's business, bank account, and his family. Back when I was still in university, I used to work for a hotel to make ends meet. When I started, the hotel very urgently needed new personnel. So I cut a deal with the old owner about getting to choose and pick shifts so I could visit my courses and exams. Speaking some extra foreign languages, I also got a little bonus each month on top. The old owner was a great guy. He owned multiple hotels, so I rarely saw him. But when he was in the house, he always made a point to have drinks with the staff. And if we were free, he even invited those at the front desk to fancy restaurants who were not on shift. Fast forward. I had worked in the hotel for a few years now and was nearing the completion of my studies. So it wouldn't have been an eternity until I had to quit anyway. As I was, of course, more interested to work in my field of study. As part of my deal with the old owner, I mostly chose to work night shifts, allowing me to visit my courses at university during the day. To make up for my privileges, I'd picked up the habit of doing some extra work in the dead of night other shifts would normally have to do, when I could have sat around and stared at the walls. People were grateful for the help in the beginning, and we became a rather tight-knit group, but over time, people rotated in and out. When the old owner retired and his butthole of a son took over the business as the new owner, I already feared the worst. The new owner didn't like me very much. I never found out the exact reason for that one. I was at that point nearly the sole veteran left from when I started. Among the tasks I had taken on was doing light clerical tasks to ease the manager's job in the morning. For that, I generally had to use the manager's network account. One night, while doing my lists, I logged into the manager's account and emailed to do my job. Then, I saw an email with my name in the subject line. I know it's not nice to snoop, but of course, I read it. Turns out, the new owner wanted to get rid of me. I still had my old employee contract with the bonuses for foreign language abilities and was allowed by my contract to pick and choose shifts. I can only assume these privileges are what made the new owner hate me. No idea if he had other reasons. Because, to be honest, these seem very weak to me. But he couldn't fire me without cause. On top of that, I would be owed severance if fired, and generally, there were not enough bodies in the shift rotation without me. Though the new owner didn't seem to understand that point as the emails told me. I looked for more emails concerning me and found them. There was an email chain between some of the employees, the manager, and the new owner. I was, of course, not CC'd as I was the hated topic. The employees didn't like me hogging the night shifts, because those paid better, and for every night you worked, you got paid the night bonus. The manager was the only one rather neutral on the matter and just curbed their enthusiasm to get rid of me as they needed me to be fully staffed. The new owner and my colleagues actively conspired to make a hostile work environment so I would quit of my own volition. I was furious. I thought about a variety of reactions, from egging their cars to burning down the hotel. But I settled on a less crazy method of revenge. I called my uncle at 2 a.m. asking for advice. My uncle is a lawyer, so for sake of proof, I forwarded myself all the emails. I made photos, printed them out, made copies, and filmed the whole deal just to be sure. My uncle told me to sit tight and see if things got worse, or if it was just bluster. And so I gave it a few days, and things did take a turn. Snide remarks about my looks, clothing, and so on were only the tip of the iceberg. Some of my colleagues were just as professional as before, but the conspirators always left extra work for me or pawned the sucky duties they normally had to do on me. I always kept a spare shirt and suit at work just to have a change, which suddenly disappeared. One guy even started to threaten me with violence, but I kept clenching my butt cheeks. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of saving on the severance or giving in. I'm a big boy after all. I did, however, stop doing any extra work I was not obligated to do, which, in the end, was the reason they used to fire me. They still had to pay me severance. The next day, my uncle, with bundled proof of the email and all documented harassment by my colleagues, served the hotel my lawsuit. It started with wrongful termination and ended with harassment. Reportedly, the manager went white as a sheet when he realized where the emails must have come from. The new owner had been on vacation and had to cancel his expensive vacation in France to deal with this. Their counsel advised them to settle. So I accepted my severance and a hefty bonus on top. enough money to last me until the end of university without work. But that was not all my revenge. I had gone after the new owner's money, but in the next step, I went after the hotel. I had used all the spare time during night shifts alone to document every last violation of city, county, district, state, and federal law I could find. That went from minor things like some harmless mold under the kitchen sink to substantial violations like modifications to the building. The building was under a limited form of historical protection by federal law on the grounds of being built and inhabited by somewhat important historical figures a few hundred years back. So every renovation or change in floor plans needs to be signed off on by a committee, which can take ages. There's also a grant paid to the new owner by the government for keeping the building intact as is. So, with my uncle's help, I sent documentation of every violation I could find to the corresponding agency. In 1 month, everything from health, building code, fire safety to the finance and work police crawled over the hotel. In the end, it was the building and fire inspectors that shut the place down. The new owner had done substantial renovations to the top floor luxury apartments, which he used when he was in town. So the new owner had to pay back the grant, pay fines for unauthorized alterations to the building, endangering his guests because something wasn't built right according to fire code, and had to close down shop until the building was fixed. I also tipped off a friend who had studied journalism and worked at a local paper. The paper ran an article on all the violations accumulated, which tanked the business once it reopened, as the newspaper article had led to horrible reviews. In the end, to afford all the fines, repayments, and building costs, the new owner sold the hotel. As the cherry on top, all the buttholes who had tried to harass me out lost their job. Granted, the people who didn't do anything to me lost their jobs too, but didn't do anything to stand up for me to help me either. So I don't feel too much remorse. And the revenge cherry on top was that the new owner, whenever he was in town, used to bring home escorts. Which in my country isn't illegal, but he was married. It took some doing to get that information to the new owner's wife. But one of my former colleagues who had quit before this had all happened had her email. So I let her know what the new owner was up to when he was out of town. I don't know what exactly happened, but they did divorce in the end. Make of that what you will. First you took his money, then you took his business, then you took his marriage. Jesus Christ, OP, you do not mess around. Our next Reddit post is from Cinelaria. My parents had me when they were plenty young. They weren't teens anymore, but had barely left that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college. That was also when they had me. So while my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lives in the same area, and the college wasn't that far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. On occasion, they frequented a bar. A drunk guy there groped my mom and did not take no as a no. My dad intervened and stopped the guy. And half an hour later, all seemed forgotten. The music was loud, the bar crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He was bleeding profusely and collapsed, but in the pressed semi-darkness and over the music, no one knew who did it. My dad got taken to the hospital. He had a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He also couldn't see who had attacked him, and his memory between the alcohol and being hit in the head was also very fuzzy. Of course, they'd considered the guy who had harassed my mom, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to that moment, let alone have any evidence. So they pressed charges against unknown, but there was virtually nothing anyone could do. But then a few days later, that piece of garbage that had harassed my mom approached her on campus. Turns out, he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments and left little doubt that it had been him that hit my dad in the face. And the piece of garbage let my mom know that my dad next time should mind his manners. And the little touching he had done didn't hurt anyone and wasn't that bad. And if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe more. And then the piece of garbage went on his merry way. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad, and his parents. But no one could do anything. It was a he said, she said deal after all, and my mom hadn't even gotten the guy's name. My mom cried a lot at that time and didn't know what to do. She also was afraid of going to classes or out alone. I honestly only remember that time very scarcely. I was just a little kid. But I can remember my dad in the hospital and with his broken nose, and my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do, and everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. But that's where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a private investigator, and he was, of course, the last to hear the full story. But the moment he heard someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on the harassment, the assault, or the threats, having no evidence. My uncle had my mom point the guy out from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him. But then, my uncle started to stalk that piece of human filth. My uncle took sick days, all his vacation, and invested every second possible to find out everything about the harasser. My uncle even approached the pig in another bar and became drinking buddies with him. Over several weeks, my uncle had uncovered all manner of illicit behavior: possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs, theft, and a few other misdemeanors and small-time stuff. And my uncle could have put him away for that. But my uncle always said when asked about it that if he were to send this douchebag to prison, it would be for molesting my mom and hurting my dad. And that's what he did. One night, while out with his new buddy drinking, my uncle made the idiot piss drunk and they landed in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, ratting off a list of illegal stuff he was up to. My uncle, of course, pretended to be a crook too. Among the stories this douchebag told was a story of how he groped some chick and brained her dude with a pitcher of beer. Now, something needs to be said. In my country, recording someone in secret is illegal, and under some conditions, like if the police do it, it's not a permissible piece of evidence in court. But as a private investigator, my uncle knew the laws for that exactly. But paradoxically, the situation is different if it's not only audio, but also has video. And my uncle had the douchebag on camera confessing. The next day, my uncle turned himself into the police with all his collected evidence, because secretly filming people was still a crime. But the video could be used as evidence in court, as my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any other governmental agency. When the criminal trial and the civil trial were over, the douchebag got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. And my uncle got slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming this douchebag. Money well spent, he always said. Honestly, I'm surprised that the prosecutor even wanted to press charges against your uncle. I would have been like, so let me get this straight. You befriended a criminal and got him to confess on tape to all these crimes, basically doing our job for us? Thanks, bud. Don't worry, I'll drop the charges. But even without that, I agree, that is $2,000 very well spent. Our next Reddit post is from Scott3496. I used to work in a disability shared accommodation agency. It's a job where you support 4 to 6 people with disabilities who share the accommodation. It's shift work, 2 clients per staff member during the day, 1 staff member on a sleepover at night. The rosters are 4-week rotating rosters. I was employed as a 0.75, meaning I work 75% of what is considered full-time, equating to 57 hours a fortnight. Working shifts sucked, but the pay was good. I was working in a house I'll call Sunup. Sunup had 4 residents and 7 workers. Each house had a house supervisor. They reported to the cluster manager, who managed 6 houses. Cluster managers report to the CEO. By company policy, leave requests are first in, best dressed, meaning you need to put your leave in early to ensure you get it. I was transferred to Sunup from a 6-client house due to my qualifications and situations I cannot legally disclose. I worked for the first year, got to know staff, clients, house supervisor, etc. There was an obvious clique between 4 staff members. Each school holidays, 3 would apply for leave, and 1 would call in sick with a medical certificate covering the same amount of time. They would always rotate who was sick to hide what they were up to. They were friends outside of work and would party together. After a year, the house supervisor fell sick. One of the clique members, Karen, was appointed acting supervisor, and it went to hell. She tried reducing my hours and giving extra time to a friend. I pointed out that I'm contracted for 57 hours a fortnight, so I'm getting paid for 57 hours a fortnight. Her friends got extra shifts, were given the best shifts, and were all around favored by Karen. In January, I put in leave for March school holidays. Karen rejected it on the grounds that others had already submitted leave. Her clique all applied for this time. I left this alone. In March, I checked the leave calendar for the June school holidays. Each house has a leave calendar, so management and staff can check who has scheduled leave. It was empty. I submitted leave again, and it was rejected. Karen said, "Sorry, you were too slow. Karen said that A, B, and C, members of the clique, already submitted leave." The next day, the leave calendar showed this. In May, I checked the Christmas leave calendar, put in my leave, and sure enough, got the same result. This annoyed me, as I have a family that I wanted to take on holiday. I spoke to the cluster manager, also a part of the clique, who said there's nothing I can do. Note, I'd taken no leave in 2 years. January the following year, the clique was on holiday. We had a gastro outbreak across our facilities, so we were short-staffed. All available staff, including the CEO, were covering shifts. I was rostered on with the CEO one shift. During the shift, he said to me, "OP, you have a bit of leave accumulated. You should probably take some." I put in 3 requests last year. All were rejected as others apparently already applied for those dates now. Let's lock in your leave now. Okay, how about 4 weeks over Christmas? I filled out the forms, CEO signed off. He filled out the leave calendar and put my application in Karen's pigeonhole. I was on sleepover that night, so I took my application, photocopied it for myself, and replaced it under the mountain of paperwork in her pigeonhole, knowing she wouldn't see it for a few months. In March, I checked the leave calendar and noticed my Christmas leave disappeared, replaced with Karen A, B, and C. I didn't say anything, as I had a leave form with a CEO signature. Fast forward to October, the original house supervisor passed away, and the acting supervisor was appointed to the permanent supervisor position by the cluster manager with a mandatory 3-month probation. December comes around. First week of my leave, I get a call from Karen. "Where are you?" "On leave." "I didn't approve any leave. Get your butt to work now." I come in. Karen chews me out, stating she didn't get an application form. Karen went on to say, "Even if you submitted it, I would reject it, as you should know by now that we always take 2 weeks in December and January." She wrote me up for insubordination. I worked that shift. When Karen left, I emailed the CEO filling him in on what happened. He called a meeting with me and Karen. What happened? Karen cut me off. "OP took it upon himself to approve leave. I wrote him up for skipping work." "Actually, I submitted leave in January while you were away." "No, you didn't." "Yes, he did. I approved it and added it to the leave calendar." "Oh, we already had 4 staff booked on leave." "Show me the leave forms." I destroyed them." I handed Karen my copy of the form signed by the CEO. "OP is on leave. I'm going to sunup and I'm investigating the situation. OP, my apologies. Go home. I'm extending your leave by an extra week." I go home. I come in 4.5 weeks later to be told that Karen has lost her promotion. She's on thin ice. The CEO found out that Karen has been rejecting leave requests. She shredded my request without looking past the date. She deleted my leave from the calendar. The CEO told Karen that this borders on fraud. The CEO also separated the clique to different houses. He changed the leave policy to state that he must sign off leave requests, in addition to house supervisor and cluster managers. He ensured that all staff had access to prime leave dates. Karen was fired 2 weeks later for failing audit requirements. Considering their job was to take care of disabled people who couldn't care for themselves, I'm thinking it's probably pretty likely that they did a sucky job of this. I mean, if they don't show respect to their coworkers, they probably didn't show respect to their clients either. Good riddance to bad rubbish. That was r/Prorevenge, and if you like this content, then don't forget to subscribe because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.